for this day and for all that we have been able to accomplish throughout this day. Thank you for allowing us to see this 9th month of this year, 2023. And thank you for these commissioners who serve this community, who serve Vance County. And so we pray especially for them, in as much as they are stewards of the resources for this county. Give them the wisdom and the knowledge to use what resources we have to make the best decisions for the citizenry of this area. Bless all the residents and bless even this time of gathering here tonight. Those things that are on the agenda, we pray that you will lead and guide and watch over each of us. Thank you for all these blessings in your name. Amen.
Next, we'll have public comments. There's been one person to sign up for public comments, and that is Chris Wright. And he's here to discuss public safety expo.
Good evening. I just want to invite y'all to the 2nd annual Vance County Public Safety Expo, September the 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the old Charles Boyd lot. You know, we have all law enforcement, animal control, highway patrol, all the fire departments, EMS. You know, hopefully a good gathering again from last year. So I just want to personally invite all y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone else that did not get an opportunity to sign up that wished to speak? Okay. Next, we'll be hearing from Frankie Nobles from the Employee Engagement Team.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Glad to be here today to present our nominee for this month, Sergeant Cleavon Dozier with the Vance County Sheriff's Office. This is what his peers had to say about him. Teamwork, because he organizes a team of bailiffs for Vance County court proceedings each day, which includes district court, superior court, and domestic court. In some cases, for disposition court, there may be anywhere between 800 to 1,000 attendees entering the courthouse. Initiative, because of his leadership, he demonstrates as an official in a court of law who keeps order and looks after inmates and ensures the safety of the court staff. Attendance, because he has been dedicated to law enforcement training and ethics for 28 years. Above and beyond, he has served as detention officer, school resource officer, jail administrator, a road deputy, criminal investigator and patrol division commander. Presently, he has served as sergeant supervisor in the Vance County Courthouse. He deserves this recognition because of his accomplishments in public safety and commitment to excellence. His leadership is notable. Sheriff. Sergeant Dozier, come on up. Remember what you wrote?
Okay. Congratulations. On behalf of the Vance County Sheriff Office, I recognize Sergeant Dozier being the recipient of this Employer of the Month for his outstanding services to the Vance County Sheriff Office. And he does a great job in our court systems. We have elected district attorney and the assistant here can contest to that, him working in the court with them on a daily basis. And we're just proud to have him aboard the Vance County Sheriff Office.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we will have District Attorney Mike Waters. our ninth judicial district attorney.
Thank y'all very much for allowing me to be here. I have been watching some of the meetings online and some of the work studies, and I thought it would be appropriate for me to come before you and provide you with some information about things going on in our court system. So first, a little bit, it's been a while since I've been here. One of the things that I did want to tell you is that back in 2014, when I ran, Vance County had the second highest dismissal rate in the state of North Carolina for DWIs. That is a very, we're very passionate about prosecuting those. As you may know, our highway patrol troop that is stationed here has consistently been one of the highest performing troops in the state of North Carolina, consistently having 3 of the top 6 troopers as far as writing DWIs. And so that's a lot to keep up with, and our court system was not. In 2022, for the second consecutive year, we got the highest conviction rate in the state of North Carolina. And the year before that, we were number 2. Those are very important to me because obviously they affect public safety and, people going to work, going to church, doing the things that they're supposed to do. They're not making the choice to interact in these ways. And this is something that saves lives. So we are very proud of that. Another thing that I told you is that we were going to commit additional resources to Vance County. And I very much appreciate the facility upgrades that were made by the county commissioners to our office. We now, with the exception of just 2 offices, we're all consolidated into one workspace. And what that allows us to do is to, number one, we had more space. And so we were able to bring more staff in. But second, we were able to be together. It improves our workflow. We have a public interface now that we did not have before, so that we're able to interact with the public. And consequently, we feel like that has been something that has allowed us to improve our work within the DA's office and all that. Just briefly, back in 2015, we have 12 assistant district attorneys and 3 assistant district attorneys that were stationed here. That did not reflect the number of pleadings that were in Vance County. Vance County has more pleadings, criminal pleadings in both district court and criminal court than any other county. And so it was not, in my mind, an equitable distribution of resources throughout the district. So as of 2023, you can see that we have realigned positions. I would note with respect to our and one, as we call him, Stephen Geen, who retired here 3 or 4 years ago, is here as a grant position, and he is in charge of restorative justice projects. The clerk of court, Henry Gupton, and our office have worked together, and we have restored almost 4,000 driver's licenses in Vance County alone with their effort through debt relief. But Mr. Geen is the ADA who's in charge of that. So with respect to that. Of the 6 assistant district attorneys that are assigned to the Vance County office, one of them does district court full-time. We have made some changes to our schedule that I think have been very beneficial as far as getting our court numbers down. I was told today when I went and inquired, we are disposing about on a day that we do not have disposition court, i.e. not a traffic day, we're disposing of about 32% of the cases that are on the docket. That is a number we're very proud of. We're not doing that by ourselves. Mr. Gupton has realigned positions within his office. And so consequently, when we need to have additional courts, we need additional clerks, those are available to us. Most frequently, and I did have Sergeant Dozier's assistance that day because I handled it personally, we had one of what I call the very rare 300+ days. We don't have many of those anymore. Most of our days are much smaller, thanks to our efforts. Some of them and some of the most effective days might only have 20 on the calendar, but there'll be 20 important cases. But we, with some prior notice, were able to arrange for a second set of clerks, a second courtroom. And so when someone came in and said they want a trial on their DWI, we said, well, we'll be happy to accommodate you. And we invited them into the next courtroom And when they got in there, they were able to work it out, and we ended up with about 12 or 13 dispositions that we would not have had that day. So one of the challenges that is facing the district attorney's office, not only here, but across the state of North Carolina, is the recruitment of assistant district attorneys. And you can see right there with the starting salary of $47,482. They are the lowest, along with public defenders, the lowest paid government attorneys in North Carolina. They also happen to have the highest workload. With respect to that, I have had probably a half dozen departures over the last 2 years, creating presently 5 vacancies in my office. Most of those are leaving our office for other state agencies, Department of Public Safety, Secretary of State, to name a few. And they go there because they get instant salary increases of $10, $20, $30, $50,000. And with respect to that, I can't blame them. When people are serving as assistant DAs, they get a lot of experience very quickly. They can become trial practitioners. And in our office, we are not like a big metropolitan office where you're going to be doing traffic court for a year. 10 months into this, we're going to expect you to be picking 12 and trying a case because we feel like that's that you got to learn. And so we consequently we work very hard when we have new attorneys to bring them along. And as it says, 95% of law students have law school debt. I serve as the board chair for the North Carolina Legal Education Assistance Fund, and we distribute around this past year, we distributed around $500,000 of law school debt to public defenders, assistant DAs, and other public service attorneys in North Carolina. It's a statewide issue. And so we have 5 vacancies in our office. That is reflected statewide. It both happens in both rural and urban areas. If you were to ask Spencer Merriweather in Charlotte, who I think has about 12 or 14 vacancies, his rate is a little bit lower. One of the things is the cost of living in Charlotte is obviously much more expensive than it is here. People go and get trained, and shortly thereafter, a year or so, they're snapped up by a big firm. We, on the other hand, have a recruitment issue of being in a legal desert and having people come here because they want to practice and be a part of a rural community. We're working really hard to alleviate some of those issues. I've been meeting with North Carolina Central on a couple of different occasions, and we are going to have our first or our second prosecutor job fair there in October, I think around October 14th. Both Central and Campbell have been very, have recognized this as an issue and have added prosecutor-centered courses to their curriculum for this past year. And I would just like to say that North Carolina Central has been particularly helpful because they have hosted several different seminars where they actually invite DAs in to speak with students. One of the issues that is facing, and we're going to talk about things that are obstacles to disposition of cases, but a issue that is critical to Vance County as of today. And when I say as of today, we had Superior Trial Court. There are no attorneys accepting indigent defense appointments at Vance County. Tucker Charnes is here, and she'll be happy to speak or add to this issue if the board would like. But what that means is the brick and mortar attorneys that are here, they don't take any indigent cases. We have some attorneys that do contract basis appointments. They come in from out of the district. And we have made some accommodations to try to do that. But we have attorneys that come from Winston. We have attorneys that come from Wilmington, Raleigh, Durham, all over the state of North Carolina as they try to match them up and get them to accept cases here. But that is a real issue. Last week, we had administrative court. Ms. Charnes had to stand up in front of Judge Ofalu and say, we don't have any attorneys this week. And so unless and until a defendant has meaningful access to a court-appointed attorney, if they're indigent, that means that everything is halted. And we're not able to do anything with respect to bond, moving a case along. That is something that must occur first. One of the issues that has come up recently These attorneys that are coming in from out of town, some of them have multiple contracts throughout the district. They're in court from 9:30 until the end of the day. They're in court somewhere in the district. They have to have access to their defendants after hours. And so we are hoping that that is going to be addressed. And if the board would like to hear anything from Ms. Charnes, she's here. I'll be happy to give the floor to her, or if there are any other questions, I guess we could save them for the end. So I asked to be on the agenda because I have been monitoring some of these meetings and I am concerned about some of the things that have been said. First of all, I want to say that there is no jail consultant that has brought anything to our attention. We monitor these things, including jail lists, including our times of disposition, and we have been doing so since the very beginning. In my offices, a senior assistant district attorney monitors the jail list when it is given every week and looks for people that are not appropriate to be in jail. And also we just keep track of that. That's something that's very important. We want to have a lower time to disposition. That is important for defendants, it's important for victims, and it's something that we strive to do. But one of the things I did hear is that we were not doing well compared to the national average. That is not an appropriate discussion. North Carolina, where does North Carolina rank nationally on spending on criminal courts? We rank 48th. We had someone from Vance County go down to Georgia and commit a crime. They were before a jury and convicted in 3 months. If you compare our court system with Georgia, that's not a fair comparison. Georgia, I think, is around 14 or 15 on state court spending. And so I think that, you know, as you frame these discussions and think about like where exactly, you know, you think the court system in Vance County is performing, it's not appropriate to discuss anything with the national average when we are number 48 out of 50 with respect to state spending. So a couple of things have happened, and these have been somewhat related to the pandemic, somewhat related to just the economy in general. But the State Crime Lab and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner have both experienced significant increases in time to completion of examinations and tests. So I will just tell you personally, I'm very involved with both of these agencies and working with them. We have worked with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to help get them additional funding from the legislature and have secured a better place in the budget for them. And I've worked with some other DAs about that, because one of the things that I have noticed over 8 years is that we used to be waiting 4 or 5 months for an autopsy report to come back. And beginning several years ago, it was taking upwards of a year or two. We cannot try a murder case until we have an autopsy. There's nothing that they can do differently at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. There are more vacancies for pathologists in the nation than there are pathology residents. They are making some changes with respect to being able to get legislation so that they can use forensic anthropologists and other non-medical personnel. And we have been working with them about, you know, when it would be appropriate to try to request an autopsy. But the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner runs, they can't work any harder. The national average for a pathologist to complete autopsies in a year is 180. The average pathologist at the Office of Chief Medical Examiner completes 330 in a year. They are paid $50,000 to $60,000 less than their counterparts in both Virginia and South Carolina. And so consequently, they have openings. And what that means is that affects our ability to get answers as to some of these cases in which they have an unexplained or a natural death. They have had difficulty having toxicologists. And one of the reasons is the crime lab pays more for their toxicologists than the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. And I think over the last 2 years, they've hired that toxicologist away 3 different times. Likewise, the State Crime Lab is also experiencing delays related to the retention of qualified people to do this forensic testing. And so you can have the best plan. You can have all the communication that you have, and certainly the pandemic affected some of that. But if you don't have the people to actually do the testing, it's going to be difficult to get it done. I have had a meeting last week with the assistant director of the crime lab and the general counsel. We are forming a stakeholder group to address some issues and gains that we think we can make with respect to that. We've also identified funding that we have from the Conference of District Attorneys that will allow us to outsource certain forensic testing. I just wanted to say a bright spot with respect to something that is going on here in Vance County. The District Attorney's Office partnered with the Henderson Police Department on a National Department of Justice grant, and that's for the National Ballistic I'm put it up there wrong. National Ballistic Integrated Ballistic Network. I think I should put ballistic twice. I'm sorry. And so with respect to that, shell casings, projectiles from across our district, so Roxborough, Warren County, Franklin County, are brought to the Henderson Police Department for examination. That is then put into a network. We are able to follow and see how sometimes guns move across our district. We've been able to solve additional crimes. We've been able to identify persons of interest. It has been a very powerful forensic tool, and I appreciate them working with us on that. Something that has changed since 2014 is the explosion, and I think that's the correct word for it, of body, dash, doorbell, and other cameras, cell phone evidence, and other electronic media, and mandatory recording of interviews. So the District Attorney's Office participated in a study by the National Center for States Courts last fall. And so that was where they kept us, ADAs were kept down to 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes of your time, you had to record what you were doing. And so it was a big lift, and I appreciate everybody in my office that participated. The DAs across the state of North Carolina had the highest participation rate that the National Center for State Courts had ever recorded. And so they felt a lot of confidence in their data. So for the 1,392 filings that were pending last year, ADA spent an average of 49.27 hours over reviewing video evidence, for instance. That's something that's changed because the video evidence was not there nearly 10 years ago. And it goes down from there, but you can see, for instance, one of the things that you need to think about is while you might only have 0.6 hours for a DWI, because the interaction is much slower, you have 38,000 of those. One of the things that we did do and started doing during the pandemic is every DWI is reviewed in our office prior. We essentially treat it like a Superior Court case, and consequently, that's one of the things that we attribute to our conviction rates soaring upwards. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly been a challenge, and it is, I think, been an example of lots of partners pulling together. But beginning in March 23rd of 2020, access to trial by jury was suspended. That was done by the Chief Justice. It was left in the discretion of the senior resident and the Chief District Court judge about how and when to resume after a period of time. March 10th, 2021, we did so on a limited basis. Michael Putney tried the second jury trial in the state of North Carolina. The first was done in New Hanover County. The second was done in Warren. We were anxious to resume jury trials. You need to have jury trials. It's an absolute part of the system. We go in and prepared to do those. We tried earlier, about 3 or 4 months earlier, and when we got jurors in, they told us that they did not feel safe. They were not going to participate, and consequently, we felt like March 10th, we were beyond the time that we wanted to get that done, but that was the earliest that we could do. So a couple of things here. The 9th District was one of about 3 judicial districts in the state of North Carolina that emerged from the pandemic with no statistical difference in the number of cases pending. So if you went to Wake County, for instance, they had about a 15 to 20% increase in the number of felonies. So they had an additional 1,000 felonies at the end of the pandemic than they would have under normal circumstances. Nash, Wilson, Edgecombe had a 40% increase in the cases. I think Lee also had around a 40% increase in cases. And so in places like Forsyth County, they did not try jury trials for almost over 2 years. And you can see, you can imagine how that affects things. What I would tell you about that, and this was told to me by the AOC director at the time, he, was applauding us and our efforts. But he said, well, before you were distilled like brandy and now you're distilled like bonded whiskey. And so let me tell you what that means. Through the pandemic, people in my office came to work. Judges came to work. Bailiffs, sheriffs, everybody came to work. But one of the things that we could not have was a jury system because jurors could not come to work because it was not safe for them to come and participate in the court system. And so consequently, things where jail time was not involved, where, had less serious crimes, where probation could be an option, whatever else, you were able to dispose of those cases. You were not able to dispose of murder cases because people don't like to sign up for, the kind of time that is involved. And consequently, that no longer was an issue. I can tell you right now that we probably have pled 8 or 10 murder cases in the last 3 weeks. And we're doing that because, not just here in Vance County, we're doing that because there is a present ability to try cases again. And so when defendants and defense counsel understands that that's now an option, then that's when we start to talk about a serious disposition of that. The pandemic still affects us. There are times when all across our district, you might have a break in jail. Did you have a question? Yes, sir, Commissioner Officer.
You said that y'all did 8 or 9 cases, murder cases?
Yes.
How many of them was in Vance County?
4. We had 2 today, 1 last week. I don't know if it's 5, but I think we, in the last month, 5. 5 or so in the last month
Vance County.
in Vance County.
Thank you.
So some challenges that have, what I would say have increased factors affecting disposition of cases. Last September, you may have seen the extensive news coverage about basically trial sessions breaking down because of the unavailability of jurors. Of the jurors that were summoned, only about 31 or 32% were showing up. That was statistically the lowest rate in this district. And so we did have a meeting with the clerk, the court, and the sheriff. And one of the things that did come out of that is that juror summons started being served personally again. And what you've seen is you have not had to cancel sessions of court because of the unavailability of jurors. Before it had happened in Person County at least once. It had happened in Vance County a couple of different times. But if you do not have enough jurors and you start picking a jury and you run out of them, that's, you won't finish your session, just that simple. And then like I said before, if you have the inability to try cases, then you're not going to be able to reach a effective plea. Like for instance, we probably pled 12 or 15 cases today because we have a jury that's available tomorrow. One of the things that we have had concerns with is the service of subpoenas. If subpoenas are not served before court, and we do not get them and they're served after the court date, they're of no use to us. We're not going to be able to reach that case and do a disposition. I don't know what the issues are surrounding that, but that has been something that has affected us with respect to our cases, particularly property crimes.
The subpoenas are served from the sheriff, right?
They are served from the sheriff, and I think by agreement, the police chief serves some of them in the city. They're not required to. It is the constitutional duty of the sheriff. One of the things that I have had concerns about is that we have, even with murder cases, had files that have been missing when investigators leave, and we're not able to try those cases when the files cannot be located. And so our answers for that is that sometimes, and they have been found, but only after extensive, energy, including court appearances as to where is the file. And that is part of our constitutional statutory ethical obligation. We are not able to go forward on a case if there's an investigative file unless we have it. And sometimes defense counsel does not care and does not ask. But if it's a murder case, you can bet that they're going to have asked to have gone through it and to make sure that everything is there. And so we're an open file discovery state, which means that everything that's in their file is supposed to be in our file. And when we are not convinced of that or do not believe that, then we're not going forward on the case. And another issue is Giglio investigations. So with respect to that, the district attorney's office has a constitutional, statutory, and ethical obligation to provide all exculpatory evidence to criminal defendants, including material related to the credibility of officers. That means that if I have a concern about an officer, I can view the personnel file, and I should be able to. But when I'm told I cannot, it is a delay. And I'm not going to try any case when I have been denied access to a personnel file when there is a reasonable belief that there is an issue affecting officer credibility. I think this gets overblown sometimes. We have a Giglio committee that meets and discusses these types of issues. In a given year, we probably write 8 to 10 letters inquiring about officers' credibility across our district. About 2 to 3 of those result in some sort of letter to the officer that we're going to have to make a disclosure about those. About 1 time a year, we have an issue that can rises to the level of we're not going to allow the officer to testify. But with respect to that, we don't expect to have to chase all this down. We are allowed by statute to be able to look at these things. And when that doesn't happen, necessarily cases get delayed. And if there are defendants in jail, then that's going to be an issue as to why they're still in jail.
If you're required to get personnel for a case, what is the main reason for not happening? If you're required by law that you can receive it.
Well, I
You
mean,
said it's a delay.
I can't physically go over and take it. They're not my files. And so if I ask and I'm told no by an agency, then I, will either try to have a conversation but eventually I'll have to file a special proceeding to get it and take the law enforcement agency to court. That takes time. And with respect to it, one of the things is that we have a lot of things that are changing since the pandemic. We deal with probably 3 to 4 times the motions for appropriate relief than we used to. Those are post-conviction pleadings that are a responsibility of the DA's office. And because they often involve murder cases, they often involve serious felonies. That means that they become part of the caseload for my senior assistant district attorneys. A couple things to touch on. We do have more homicides pending in Vance County than we do any other county. We tap resources from across our district, experienced prosecutors to come and handle those cases. And so anybody that has a homicide caseload in their own county also has responsibility for 1 or more homicide cases here in Vance. We understand and we want to reach dispositions about those. There are things that affect it. One of the things most recently has been lawyers withdrawing. We don't have a choice in that. That sometimes is something that we object to, but we may not. We had a case calendared for November. It had been tried at least once. It had been brought to trial a time before that, and that there was a witness that had been tampered with, and the lawyer withdrew from that last week. It will start over. It's not reasonable to think that a lawyer is going to be prepared to try a murder case in less than a year. There are some that, I've seen them do it at 9 months. The case that we pled last week, in which the defendant pled guilty to second-degree murder and got 50+ years, the lawyer was appointed in February. It was a very straightforward case. He knew that when he accepted the appointment that it was going to be done this fall. And so he did it knowing that. But if attorneys are not willing to do that or not willing to commit to such an aggressive timetable, the clock starts over. I used to tell victims that in a homicide case, we will try to have your case resolved in 2 years. And that was among the fastest in the state at the time. I can no longer say that. And one of the reasons why is that we have a backlog of these cases from the COVID-19 pandemic. We have additional factors of that, with regard to the availability of ADAs. And we also have issues just regarding the complexity of the cases and additional information from digital evidence. But with respect to some of the correspondence and the discussion about the jail, I will say that we have engaged in serious efforts to try to reduce the jail population all along, to make sure, for instance, that people that are suffering from mental health disorders are not in jail. And if they are in jail, that we're getting them the help that they need. That we are trying to have an appropriate and fast time to disposition. And we balance that with making sure that we're prepared with the case and that kind of thing. But these issues are something that our office has been concerned with from day one. When I came here in January 1st of 2015, there were murder cases that were pending from 2009.
Mhm.
We had those off the books by 2017. And in March 1 of 2017, there were 18 pending homicides in Vance County. Across our nation, across our state, we have had an increase in violent crime, and Vance County is no exception. There is a proliferation of guns, and they are being used. And consequently, we're going to have more murder cases for the foreseeable future. We will continue to do the things that we need to do to address it, including, bringing the experience that we need to move these very serious cases. I'd be happy to take any questions. I'd also be happy, Ms. Tucker Charnes, who's the regional public defender for this part of the state, who supervises the appointment of indigent cases, is also here, and she's available to take questions from the board.
Yeah, I have a question. How many murder cases, excuse me, how many murder cases do we actually have right now in Vance County?
I think 50, well, we have about 50. Is that right? Well, we have less than we had. We had about 58. And like I said, we have pled several. So somewhere a little bit above 50.
So how many is incarcerated in jail now? Like those cases, all of them? Like
No.
52,
about 50?
50.
Conditions of pretrial release are set by a Superior Court judge unless they are charged with capital murder. And we only have one defendant who is charged with capital murder here in Vance County. They are entitled to a bond consideration. That doesn't mean they will get a bond, but they are entitled to the possibility of that. And so that's a fluid kind of thing. You can have someone who's out on bond for a murder case, and then they violate a condition of their release, and then they're in custody. You can have sometime the passage of time, if the state is not able to get the case done in a certain period of time, the judge, may take that into consideration in granting or lowering a bond.
I have a question to ask you. In terms of the state jail population, are they experiencing the same type of overcrowding that the local jails in some places are experiencing?
I'm not sure with respect to that. I can tell you across our district, Franklin County is close to full, but they have lots of federal inmates and they have some state inmates as well. Granville County is not full, but they are now taking federal inmates. There is a reality that we have more people charged with homicide here in Vance County than we do per capita in other parts of the district. That's something that we have to deal with. That doesn't mean that it's not a good place to live. It doesn't mean that, everybody is, needs to be, concerned. It just means that, that's what it is. By example, in Pershing County last September, there was one pending homicide case. By October 30th, there were 7. Crime is a fluid thing. It might average the same over a period of time and you might reflect trends. But if you look at it in a snapshot of a year or two, that is going to be a mistake because it's not necessarily, it might reflect some things that are going on, it might not. I was speaking to a community watch group with a law enforcement agency a couple of years ago, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and that community had not had a homicide for about 28 months and they had 2 in a week and they were in a panic. It happens. And so with respect to that, that community is still the same place it was and they average about 1 a year. And so with respect to that, I would say that we are having more of these violent crimes over the last 2 or 3 years. But that is something that is reflected as a national trend and not just for Vance County.
Okay, and do you all have any kind of particular policy concerning the 3 strikes rule here in Vance County? When that person has multiple felonies and they keep coming back and back and back?
Well, we have to be fair. And so we have internal guidelines. And when I say that, my ADAs, I tell them I'm going to manage philosophy and process. And we want to have a brand of tough love, which means that we do all kinds of things to try to work things out for people that have problems. If you have a substance abuse problem and you've gotten stuck with, some drugs and you are not trying to sell them to anybody or whatever else, it makes no sense for me to try to prosecute you like you're Pablo Escobar. And so consequently, we try to have policies in place within our office that channel people to an appropriate disposition. We do a misdemeanor diversion program here in this district, which means that people that have been arrested for substance abuse issues their first time, their second time, maybe their third, we're going to try to find a solution that is going to involve treatment because prison is expensive. Nobody wants to keep paying for it. I think DAs have led the charge over the last decade into the prison population has been reduced by 1/3. But if you're a violent person, if you're going to hurt someone else in this community, if you're dangerous to others, then I think that you need to, prison might be an appropriate place for you to go. And so consequently, what we want to have is something that is fair, is repeatable, but it's not a hard 3 strikes and you're out rule because the things that have to be considered are the strength of the case, the quality of the evidence, the interest of the victims, the interest of the state. And one of the things is that people don't quite understand it is that sometimes the interests of the victims and the interests of the state of North Carolina are not the same. And I have lots of very difficult conversations with law enforcement, with victims, and tell them that, while you may want this to happen or might believe that this should happen, it's not appropriate. We do have one thing that we want to, we would like all law enforcement to understand, and I feel like they do. We want academic integrity in our charging. So we have worked very hard over the last 2 terms to make sure that when we're working with law enforcement, that they charge the crime that is there. You don't need to amp it up. You don't need to overcharge them. If it's, if it's a possession with intent to manufacture, sell, deliver case, don't call it a trafficking case. Because when I get to, the grand jury, I'm going to call it like it is. And so, we very much want to have people charged appropriately. That helps our system. It means that they're not in the jail on a bond that they shouldn't be under. We do a lot of review though, and try to get dispositions in district court and some of our felony cases. And one of the things that will change, that law that was passed this year is that beginning at the end of October, we will be able to have felony pleas in district court. That's always been a discretionary thing. It's now going to be mandatory. I've met with our chief district court judge and we are going to be doing our 9096s, deferred prosecutions in district court. We believe that gives a faster time to disposition to the offender. which mean, because oftentimes they need treatment and we get them in a treatment paradigm in 60 days or 90 days, as opposed to it being close to a year by the time it gets done in Superior Court. Sorry, that was a lot for maybe your answer, but
That's fine.
It was,
four.
it's
Okay.
42.
We have had 4 dispositions for homicide cases in Vance County in the last 3 weeks.
So you gave us a lot of information, but the issue concerning Vance County, what we as the board, the concerns that I've heard, you gave us a lot of factors of the delay, because one of the issues that always come across us, the board, is that because there are so many murder cases in the jail, so you told us a lot of factors that's played, this is the reason why some of the delay. So what I'm saying, I guess you are not the reason, because most of the things that I've heard, that you the reason why they're not on the docket.
Well,
So I just want to clear up.
I believe that our DA's office measures up really well against other DA's offices in the state of North Carolina. And we take our responsibility to move our cases through this court system very seriously. I have, overheard some things in this meetings that, I don't think are correct. And I wanted to have the opportunity to come down and talk about what's actually being done. I serve on the Sentencing Policy Advisory Commission for the state of North Carolina. We meet on Friday, for instance. And so with respect to that, they publish an annual report of the disposition. And I think that our office measures up very, very favorably with respect to that. And so, for instance, I can tell you in 2014, there were no jury trials tried in this district. And that's, an abominable statistic. But that's not something that happens now, and that I believe that we have to have the ready and present ability to be able to try cases. You also have to understand that administrative court is a huge part of what we do. We dispose of almost 70% of our cases by agreement, and people talk about a plea bargain. Well, a plea bargain really isn't a bargain to anybody. The defendant did not want to take the plea. And the state, may not have wanted to give it away. But the fact is that we're given the resources to try 3% of our cases in this state, and about 40% of the homicide cases. And we have to work the rest of them out, and we do. And there are equities about why we should. Some defendants, like for instance, we were working with one person today. A lot of the things that I wanted that defendant to accomplish, going to rehab, changing things around, for themselves, making betterment of themselves, they were handling that before they got to court. I mean, it might have been post-charge, and I might have, insisted that we have to have an appropriate disposition that reflected the crime. But that doesn't mean that the judge can't take all those other things in consideration. And we have an academic responsibility when a defendant has accepted responsibility, has, participated in drug treatment or other things that are going to, keep them from coming back to the court system, to acknowledge it. And we do. We don't argue about that. If they're going to drug treatment and they got a piece of paper saying they're going to drug treatment, by gosh, they're gone. What? That's not anything to argue about. And so consequently, when we get in front of the judge, we're not taking that into, consideration. I've seen judges that have, we have mental health, and that is a huge issue with respect to our community. And I've been working really hard to try to do some things and help get some assistance with that. I know it's a very, with some of the board members is very passionate about it, but there's a huge intersection between the criminal justice and mental health. But what I would just say about the court system is they don't get to us until all the other things didn't work. And so with respect to some of the issues that the board is facing about, whether or not it wants to build a jail, I would just tell you that I think the partners in the criminal justice system are doing their best to try to move cases through. And sometimes that's a dismissal, sometimes that's a conviction, but we just try to do, we try to do what's right.
Now, when we had our last meeting, when they did a study on the jail,
Yes.
you were specifically asked, have you and the sheriff had a conversation on some of these issues that you just mentioned?
Yes.
Have y'all had a conversation?
No.
Why?
I have to ask him.
He's sitting right there.
Well, I think that it's not appropriate for us to get into some of these issues right there.
My thing is not to get into the issues, But like Commissioner Fang said, you have gave us a whole lot of information at one time.
Mhm.
But we haven't heard nothing of solutions and trying to work it out.
Then respectfully, I don't think you've been
Respectfully.
listening because we are solutions every day. We went to court today and worked really hard to get and make hard decisions. And some of those cases were people that were in the jail. Some of those were not in the jail. But we worked really hard to make sure that we got a disposition with respect to those cases. And if we weren't, we were going to try them.
I've just got to correct one thing, Mike.
Yes.
In terms of this national average, I don't think none of us think we're experts about any kind of national average. But we did have our architect here who did our study. And as part of his study, he maybe have
did.
mentioned that. But I don't think any of us per se did any kind of research to try to find a national average or
no,
anything like
if-
that. So I just
if-
wanted to clear that up.
Absolutely. That was something that I saw in the jail study and saw that in the presentation. It's not appropriate to try to compare us to that. I mean, you can only do with what you got. And with respect to that, I think we do a whole lot with the resources that we have. We are an under-resourced agency. Every law enforcement agency that you run into is under-resourced. It is not lost on me that only about 20% of the people are choosing a law enforcement career as opposed to 6 years ago. That is an epidemic of its own. That is a crisis of its own. And certainly, I think it's appropriate to, when I have seen and spoken to governmental bodies across this district pointed out that, when officer pay is increased, that does affect it. It's not the only thing, but it's certainly a big component of that. And professional law enforcement services are going to cost more in the future.
Just a comment. I'd like to say thank you for what you do with the case management for the justice involved individuals with mental health issues. You
Thank
made some great strides in that area, and your participation has been key to making some of those things happen. And I hope we can continue to do that.
Absolutely. And I remember our discussions prior to me running about, certainly one of the things I was always concerned about is some of the things that were happening in Vance County or not happening in Vance County that should. And I hope that our efforts are reflected of our commitment. Vance County is the geographic center of this district, and it is important to how basically how the rest of our district is going to be. And one of the things is that I have gone to the legislature and obviously been pretty successful in getting assistance. And one of the things is kind of like, I walk into some legislator's office and he jokes and he says, "You're the only DA's office with a foreign policy," because I'm knocking on everybody's door. But one of the things is that we have explained, and I think that the legislature has bought into, is it's important to support communities, even if they're not your own, because if they're your neighbors, that's going to affect yours. And so with respect to that, that's one of the reasons that we've been able to grow our office.
The other thing, you mentioned a number of factors tonight. So we do have issues. Now, how do we work towards a solution?
Well,
What factors are most important to getting this solved so that you can do your job the way you'd like for it to be done?
Well, I don't know. I mean, some of the things are just beyond my control. I think that, some of them belong to the court ultimately to enforce, like whether or not someone is going to be allowed access to their client after hours. And how that's enforced is in a case. And when someone comes before and files a motion to dismiss because of due process of law, then that's how it is done. Otherwise, it has to be an acknowledgement or about the issue and that, someone's going to do something, but I can't. I'm not in a position to do anything. I remain open and my office remains committed to doing the things it needs to do to improve our court system. We have engaged in a lot of change. One of the things that we did is drastically change our schedule with respect to district court. Our office hated it at first. It was difficult for our office. The results that we have seen over the last year demonstrate that it was the right thing to do. And going forward, it might be harder on law enforcement. It might be harder on the DA's office. It certainly was harder on the clerk's office. It absolutely was a thing to do, and the gains that we have by trying new things show that, you know, innovation can work. So.
Around a lot of the issues that you've spoken of and also the sheriff has spoken of, it seems one common issue is communication.
Yes.
How do we get everybody at the table to sit down?
I can say that my ADAs and the professional investigators and officers that are working with in the sheriff's office have excellent communication.
Okay.
So, you know, if there are policy decisions that have to be made, that is beyond my control. Certainly, I can offer suggestions. We have a constitutional obligation to advise law enforcement. We take it very seriously. We do that for all the law enforcement agencies here in our district. But if you don't ask us or don't want our opinion, then you're not going to get it. I mean, we can't shop it out.
And one thing I want to say is, you know, we did meet with you, Ms. Pelfrey, the sheriff was there, our former county manager, Joy McMillan was there, myself, Mr. Austin was there. And during that time, it was a meeting that was called by the firm that we had retained to actually do the jail study. And I think one of the issues that we had discussed is the bed capacity. I think that was one of the things they needed to complete the study. And during that meeting, I do recall Ms. Pelfrey stating, you know, taking notes and trying to identify cases in which she could get disposed of. And I just want to say that I have observed and I've seen her do that, you know, do what she said she was going to do. And I do want to commend her for doing that because, you know, she did keep her word and try to get some of those cases. And she was very diligent about recording what she thought could go ahead and be disposed of. And I think she's done a real good job with that.
Well, I remember, hearing about and some of this talk. I mean, Mr. Towns was when they built that jail back in, was it the 80s? One of the things that Cartar paid for was a jail liaison. And he worked for the sheriff, but he worked in the court system and was constantly communicating with lawyers and district attorneys and whatever else about, trying to do things that would help get people out of jail. We want to do what we can do to reduce our time to disposition. And we feel like that we have had successful formulas before. The pandemic obviously put a kink in that. Resource issues regarding the crime lab and regarding the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. We're working with them closely. I probably have had 5 in-person meetings with the Chief Medical Examiner herself in the last 18 months. And trying to help secure funding from the legislature to alleviate some of their problems and trying to work with them about common sense solutions. One of the things is that, they just bandwidth wise cannot process the number of autopsies that they're requested. And so one of the things that we have done is try to work with, having basically screening some of these cases about when a forensic anthropologist might be more appropriate to conduct the death investigation rather than the pathologist. We are, like I said, we're an under-resourced agency and we are looking for solutions. It is going to be some time before I have all 18 ADAs. Until that time, I have 1 ADA presently in Granville County. One of the things that I promised I wasn't going to do is strip away one place over another if I could help it. And so I've been very fortunate. We've been able to kind of chip in and that kind of thing, but that's a very difficult situation to go in an office where you went from answering 1/3 of the calls or handling 1/3 of the cases to handling all of them. But that's our reality. And so to that end, that's going to be a challenge for us.
We spent a lot of time tonight talking about serious crime and so forth. One thing that's plaguing our county is litter and prosecuting people littering. I think our public safety committee at this time is starting a process to try to come up with a prosecutable way to handle these cases. Can you guys support us in making sure that we're doing things that we can actually take people and prosecute and get convictions.
We absolutely will. Our same paradigm has got to be there. Can we convict somebody? Often, I mean, those are sometimes difficult cases. We got ready, for instance, to have one about a year or so ago and asked the deputy, and he said, I don't know anything about that. I mean, and so consequently, that's the case ends there. When we realize it's an issue, I detest it. And I think there should be a lot of shame in being a litter bug. But it's something that goes on. But if we can find a way to deal with these cases more effectively, then we will.
I mean, we've got one case we're dealing with now. They all moved over 20 tons of garbage last week from the property. And that's after the DOT had already done the right of way stuff.
Right. If you can tell me who did it and show me and convince me that I have them beyond a reasonable doubt, then
Yeah, and in the
I'll help
past-
prosecute him. I mean, I have a case in Franklin County where we are considering charging a felony, and probably we'll send it to the grand jury if we cannot get a resolution. I mean, that's one of the things too. I mean, the practical reality is if, people do things ahead of time to take the criminal justice system out of it, then, we understand that too. But that's an important issue. It comes down to, can we prosecute or not?
I mean, in the past, we'd gone through garbage, pulled names, addresses, those kind of things out. And now we're told that that doesn't work anymore.
We haven't had a lot of success with getting those cases, to a guilty verdict. And, it's hard to kind of talk about a case and all the facts and circumstances. I'm not personally familiar with it. I do know that my ADAs have talked to me about some of these cases and their frustration in trying to get the cases built to a point where they feel like they would be successful.
Mike, this is high in the sky, pie in the sky. In terms of technology and everything, is anybody using, you said one of the hindrances is jury trial. Is anybody using technology in terms of Zoom for doing juries?
That's not going to happen, So we do use technology quite a bit. We have virtual court appearances with respect to that. And we have a Crave system that's been installed here. But there are limits as to what can be done. And juries have to come in and be there. We have, over the last 3 or 4 years, have worked with our senior resident, John Dunlow, and our office is the one that schedules the Superior Court sessions. So way back in the day, when I first got here, Judge Hobgood's office did it, and they just sent us a schedule. And if that made it really difficult for some attorneys to make it from one place to the other, if they had to be in 3 different courts that week, too bad. They weren't going to be there. And allowing, I would say that Judge Dunlow has allowed us to prioritize the criminal court system over civil sessions. There are not as many civil sessions. There are not as many civil pleadings as there used to be. And so, for instance, in Vance County, we've gone from having 8 jury sessions a year to 11. We have 12 administrative sessions. And there has never been a time in the last couple of years that I've asked Mr. Gupton or our senior resident about having a special setting or something to dispose of cases that I have been told no. It may not be the week I picked was the best week, but we're going to get it done. And we routinely have additional sessions of court as attorneys, judges, clerks are available. One thing I would just like to say, Mr. Gupton has made some difficult decisions in his office and has allocated additional resources towards the criminal courts, meaning that he has more criminal clerks. And consequently, when it comes time for me to have a special setting like the one I talked to you before, whether we have to try what I would call a complicated case, such as a homicide that might go over a week or go sometimes 6 weeks or so, because of the facility that we don't have anywhere else, by the way. The Vance County Courthouse is the best courthouse in our district because we have a 3rd courtroom, and the addition of the new schedule that was implemented by John Davis allows us to be able to use that 3rd courtroom for Superior Court, for probation court, for additional district courts. And so we have a wonderful facility over there, and we are able to get more done because of it.
So we have access to that PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's right here. I'll leave it with you. So, and
Listen, let me,
I guess I can put it up. I can just tender to the
Get
secretary.
to Kelly and she'll get it to us.
Let me
Yes.
thank you for coming in and taking the heat, so to speak. I've been here a long time. It's the first time I can recall the district attorney coming in here with this kind of a presentation. So I really appreciate you coming in and exposing us to your problems, which are kind of reflective of problems in other areas of our state and our country. Everybody are underpaying employees. Everybody has trouble keeping them, retaining them, getting qualified people. So you are no exception. And yet you're in a tough position because we expect great things out of our DA in terms of the criminals. And you would like to deliver those things, but in all cases, you don't have the resources to do that. You made that very plain here today. And I appreciate you coming in and doing that.
We do the
Now,
best.
I want to ask you three
Yeah, okay,
questions.
okay.
Okay. After I give you all those kudos, I want to ask you three
Okay.
questions. Number one, the number of people we have who've been charged with murder in our jails, how many of them are indigent?
Virtually all of them.
Which means that they get no lawyers because you told us indigent people don't have any lawyers.
There are often delays in the appointment of attorneys. And so, for instance, we had someone withdraw from a murder defendant last week. We had one today. And I mean, I was personally involved in that case. I had worked with the attorney the attorney that,
My
well-
question really is, if we have, 4 or 5 murder charges, people in jail and they're indigent, they don't have any defense attorneys. So you can't
Well-
get to them. Those cases can't get started
they don't get
That's what I'm
started
hearing.
until they have a lawyer.
till they have a lawyer.
And then they have to have a lawyer. And, you know, one of the things that we have done in the past, and we hope that we would be able to continue to do it, is, you know, a defendant has to have trust with their lawyer. And we believe that that means meaningful contact. And one of the things that we have done that we have found to be very successful is the sheriff will arrange for the defendant to be brought over to our conference room and to have someone to be there to keep them secure and to meet with the lawyer for an extended period of time to review the hours and hours of discovery, to review plea offers, to have a conversation that does not occur through glass or not in a tightly closed room. And when that happens, and we do that at the beginning of the case, and we do that as we are approaching the opportunity to plead it or try it, we find that that's when kind of we're most likely to reach an appropriate disposition. It may not be the disposition I want. It may not be the disposition the defendant wants, but, you know, a true compromise is where both parties kind of walk away feeling, you know, roughed up a little bit. But when they're able to have those conversations, then they're able to get, you know, more likely to get a disposition. And so that's hugely important. That cannot happen if we don't have them appointed.
But that, it seems to me, would relate or be a cause of long jail times. Because if they don't have a lawyer because they're indigent, you can't start processing them through the system to get them to trial because they have no defense attorney. And then if they get one, and like I heard over here, the attorney works and then he drops out after a few days, that extends their time in jail and this sort of thing. So, I mean, is there any solutions, how you're working around?
Well, we
this
do,
indigent?
we have a couple of different things that happen. If we have a situation where we have a defendant that is consistently dismissing his counsel, we will ask the judge, and the judge often will do this. We'll go in and have a conversation separate and apart from us basically in chambers where they clear the courtroom, and they might make findings of fact as to what is going on. Those are then reduced to writing, put in an envelope, and probably never seen. But should a judge run across a similar circumstance, they'll be able to review those. The situation today, the lawyer had an excellent reputation. I know worked really hard to get a disposition. The defendant didn't want to do what we offered. And we had something that probably upset the victim, upset the defendant. I mean, nobody was happy with it, but it was the fair thing to do. But they have a right to a trial, and we will make sure that they have that. We get that for them at some
What
point.
I'm hearing is that the person charged can actually dismiss their lawyer for whatever reasons. And
It's
they're back-
it's really not whatever reason though. I want to be fair. The judge has to make a decision. And so in this particular case, for instance, the lawyer came in and there was a disagreement, but he represented the court. I can still represent this person. I think that most lawyers understand the circumstances which force them to withdraw. It's something that starts the clock over. It's not something that happens in all cases, but particularly with these very serious cases, when you have something that's been pending 2 or 3 or 4 years and the clock starts over again, it is devastating to the victims and it's
What you're
devastating to
telling me is
everybody else.
100% of all the people we have in our jail charged with murder are indigent.
Yes.
Is that what I heard?
I don't think anybody, I mean, very few of them
Relates
have
back
private
to
counsel.
indigent case. Nobody in that, no lawyer in Vance County is taking indigent cases.
That's correct.
So
No
that's a
longer.
problem. Okay.
And Mr. Taylor, we have Ms. Tucker here from Indigent Services, so I'm thinking that she is in a good position to, Mike Waters has given us the perspective from the district attorney's office. I think, if she is willing, we could hear it from the defense perspective about what may be beneficial for them to get some cases moving. And so I think some of the commissioners have stated they wanted to hear from her, especially as regards to indigent, because she is from Indigent Services.
Okay.
If I could, I just wanted to finish one thing. With respect to our office and our responsibility, we want a community to feel safer. And I have seen that when bad things happen, how it changes how a community feels. If you feel like, you can't leave something at your house because it's going to be lifted or whatever else, that's a bad feeling. If you feel like it's dangerous to go outside, it's a bad feeling. And so consequently, you don't participate in church. You don't go to the grocery store. You don't do the things that you need to do. You don't go exercise. So we understand the value of how our work can impact positively or negatively a community and people's very existence and happiness within it. So thank you very much for the
Let
opportunity.
me
Oh,
ask
go
you
ahead.
2 more quick questions here. How many times have you been refused files in Vance County? You mentioned in your presentation that before you go to trial
Twice,
with a policeman,
twice.
okay? Did you sometimes ask for their files because you don't want to go?
Yes.
How many times in Vance County have you been refused files for policemen?
Twice in the last year.
Twice in the last year.
Yes.
How about the last 3 years?
It's a very difficult thing. And if we look
Roughly,
at,
I'm not.
well,
looking at
here's
exact
the
numbers.
deal. If someone is charged with a crime,
Let me ask this.
I'm not
question.
allowed to look and I'm not
Let me
going
ask
to
the
look.
question differently.
Okay.
Is it common for you to be refused files in Vance County, or is it an exception when you're refused a file in Vance?
I don't ask very often, and I don't have to ask very often. You're asking about Giglio or asking about the
That's for
investigation?
personnel files for the police.
that's-
Who's going to be there is what you said, and you said you refuse to go to trial if you don't have that file.
That's
You
correct.
can't, isn't that what you just said?
That's-
I'm just trying to find out in Vance County, how many times you've been refused files for policemen?
That's happened twice in the past year.
Say again, in the past 9 months, that's happened twice.
That's happened twice with respect to the sheriff's office.
With the what?
With respect to the sheriff's office.
Okay. The third question I had, and I won't have any.
Yes.
You said that Vance County has the highest conviction rate any district attorney office in North?
Our district has the highest
Highest
conviction
conviction
rate for
Could you
DWIs.
tell me the categories of crimes you're talking about when you talk about conviction? You listed 3 up there: homicide, sex, and what DWI. Are we talking, when you say conviction, what are we talking about here in terms of types of crimes?
So I think what you were confusing 2 different slides. So one of the early slides I had was with respect to DWIs. And so DWIs are kept by the statistics are kept by the Sentencing Policy Advisory Commission. And so over a period of 8 years, we have been on a slow climb to erase that. We actually, during the pandemic, came up with a solution because, we didn't want our, court system to stop. And so we came up with court by appointment. And so we would give a lawyer an appointment. He would have to bring 3 clients or 4, or she would bring those clients, and we would try those cases, and then we'd be on to another one. And so what we learned is that in having these special courts that were made possible by Judge Davis's scheduling changes, that we were able to make real impacts. And I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago in Franklin County, we had 19 WWIs on the calendar. That's a very small calendar, but we got 17 of them done. And so when you have 200 or 300 cases on the calendar, it's hard to get to that number of dispositions. And so we are constantly looking for solutions to try to speed these things along. One last thing about Giglio. When we go to court and argue about this, we're not only stuck with that case, but we're also stuck with anything that they supervised. And I did want to specify specifically that if someone is facing a criminal charge under investigation or something like that, where I could end up prosecuting someone, I am not entitled to that and never would seek it. It is only when the allegation is something that would bear on the credibility of the officer, as it would need to be turned over to the defendant. And, that's what that is limited to.
So when you say the highest conviction rate, you're talking DWI conviction.
DWIs,
That's what you're talking.
right.
That's what I wanted to be.
Right. I mean, we had a very high conviction rate for a while. I would say that one of the things depends upon, juries are reflections of the community. And as our community deals with questions whether or not they feel comfortable with law enforcement, whether they feel comfortable with politics or how things are going on in our nation or whatever else is reflected in our community, it's going to change. So.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
have a tough job. I wouldn't want.
Right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Borders. Ms. Tucker.
So, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Tucker Charnes, and I'm a regional defender with Indigent Defense Services, and that's IDS. And IDS is charged essentially with safeguarding the public's money to make sure that we're spending our money appropriately and that the clients in North Carolina, the defendants in North Carolina receive the absolute best representation that they can. Unfortunately, here in Vance County, we're experiencing the crisis that is affecting almost every county in North Carolina. Forsyth County is out of attorneys for low-level felonies. Forsyth County is out of qualified court-appointed attorneys. Wake County has a shortage as well. I cover 18 counties presently in North Carolina. No county has an abundance of attorneys. Why is this? When we talk to the attorneys about why they're not coming back or why they won't come on the list, excuse me, the number one reason is money. In 2012, the legislature cut the amount of money that we could pay court-appointed attorneys. That we have never made that up, never. If we did, they'd be making $110 to $125 an hour. Today, attorneys are making $65 an hour on misdemeanors to low-level felonies and $85 an hour on high-level felonies, and $100 an hour on first-degree murder cases. So what can we do about the money at IDS? Nothing. We're solely dependent on what the legislature, with the money that they give us. What we have done, though, in 18 counties where we have contracts, is we're able to pay the attorneys every month. So the attorneys don't have to wait till a case is over to get paid. You work 6 hours this month, we're going to pay you 6 times whatever the hourly rate is. They have to submit their hours in a sheet that we can process. What can y'all do about the money? Well, you can contact your senator, Ms. Barnes, Senator Barnes, is that right? And I'm sorry, I don't know who your representative is. But they're the ones that need to know that the lack of money is causing a crisis of constitutional tsunami proportions. I mean, I've been an attorney for 32 years. I've never had an experience where we didn't have an attorney. So much that in November of this year, the court appointed me to 359 cases in Vance County. I'm not a member of the local bar. That's not a solution. But so it's the money, also the attorneys, because we have so few attorneys, the caseload is overwhelming. We don't want attorneys overwhelmed with too many cases. And then the third reason is when it comes to Vance County specifically, is it's really difficult sometimes to get access to the clients. And I know that Mr. Waters allows his office to be used as a conference room because I've used it with the attorneys with whom I consult. I just want to let you know that over at the jail, when you meet with a client over there, there's one booth. You go in, you sign in, you have to wait for somebody because they're understaffed. I'm not assessing blame. I'm just saying I have seen this myself. They try to get you as soon as possible. You go into a room, it's glass, there's a phone here. So you have to get the phone to talk to your client who's on the other side of the glass. And every 3 to 6 minutes, he has to put in another number. It is not conducive at all to relationship with the client because clients are already, they're in jail, they're in cages, they're away from their families. And it just gets interrupted when they want to talk to their clients. So it's, the attorneys we have to bring in, we have to pay them mileage and we have to pay them an hourly rate for the time it takes them to come up here. And we will do it. We did need an attorney today. We were out of attorneys for high-level felonies. I was on the phone immediately. We found an attorney from Durham County is going to come up here. We do this routinely, but it's like playing tennis with Serena Williams. And she's just going to get them by me we can, block them as much as we can. But the day has finally come where we've just run out of attorneys in this county. But IDS is working with Mr. Waters and the judges here to, to do what we can to get attorneys up here. If you have any questions, be glad to answer them.
Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Tucker Barnes? All right, we appreciate it and we appreciate you expressing your observations. Okay, next on our agenda, we have Rodney Gray from Zytel LLC. He's going to speak about broadband.
Madam Chairman, if I can introduce this topic on the broadband.
Okay.
At your last meeting, I had informed the board that the State Department of Information Technology reached out to the county about an additional great grant award for broadband. And Zytel is the partner that they were referring us to. The clerk is passing out a map right now that will show a number of maps. Rodney's going to have some information on this, but I wanted to kind of set the picture for you first. If you'll turn to the last page of this handout, it'll be a map that is in red and yellow and white. It's basically a map of Vance County that shows broadband areas of need, both in terms of the yellow is basically called underserved, and then the red is unserved. That map is going to correspond then to the first, second, and third page. Currently, Vance County has a great grant award with Brightspeed that was awarded previously by the state and it is partly funded by Vance County. That is in process, even though very little has been done. I think it's mainly in engineering work. Right now, there's really no feet on the ground that I'm aware of work that's been done on that. The second page is the Zytel proposal, which Mr. Gray is going to go over in much more detail. And then the third page would be the two maps overlaid. So that's kind of wanted to set a broad picture of that as to the presentation tonight. So Mr. Gray, from there.
Thank you. Members of the board, thank you very much for having me. I wanted to come in here basically to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about Zytel. Zytel, we're a Virginia-based company out of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're a regional broadband provider. We pride ourselves on the fact that we are a rural broadband company. We started in the Bedford County area around Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia and have expanded out to 3 different counties with over 24,000 passings and potential customers in the region of Virginia and also into the city of Danville on their municipality network. We applied for 10 different counties in North Carolina for great grants. And Vance County makes the 9th county now that we have won the Great Grant Award from the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. We like to see ourselves as the type of company we're do things a little different than the larger providers, the national chain providers that you have. We're a locally owned company, privately owned. We see ourselves coming into partnerships with our localities. We do things differently than the bigger providers. We come in and we can offer you dark fiber solutions to your IT department to connect your government facilities. We like to partner with local volunteer fire departments and EMS services to provide for them to us to utilize their facilities as POPs. POPs are points of presence, or where we take the signal and we amplify it to send out the fiber to the community and to the residents. And in exchange for the volunteer fire departments who give us everything we need, because they have all we need is a small closet to put data equipment in. We need 24/7 access. Most volunteer fire departments can give us that type of access, and we need generators that can run the power for the equipment, which uses very little electricity. We can save them $400, $500, $600 a month because we give them free internet services and free voice services to all your local volunteer fire and rescue squads. And they get that at no charge. We usually write a contract with them that tells them for as long as they allow us to use the space, they'll get the fastest internet that we can offer to small businesses. One of the things that's different about us, we keep our overhead low. I'm the chief operating officer and one of the minority principals in the company, and I'm the one here speaking to you. You don't have a vice president of government relations or the liaison of government, grants that's here talking to you. I'm the chief operating officer, and we're the ones that are out here. We are not the leftovers of one of the large mob bell companies in the breakup of the telecommunication companies from the 70s. We originally started out as an IT company. The president of our company, Brandon, he built a house up in Bedford County, and one of the national providers wanted $45,000 to get him cable TV and internet down his gravel driveway at the house he was building. We had the conversation and said, let's just become our own provider. For $45,000, we'll put fiber in your own neighborhood. That was back in 2017, and that's how Zytel got started. And we've been providing service in southwestern Virginia since then. We do things a little differently than how we treat our customers, because we are IT people. We're not from the old communication days. We're technology professionals, and that's how we are coming at this problem of broadband and bringing internet to residents. This slide right here shows all the maps of the footprints in Virginia right now. They're a little outdated because we're actively building right now. We're a 2022 VADI award winner. VADI, Virginia Telecommunications Initiative, is the Virginia equivalent of the GREAT grant. I don't know what GREAT is an acronym to, and I'm sure they paid a marketing company a lot of money to come up with that acronym, but it's an acronym about rural broadband. This is our VADI 2022 map. It's 422 miles of fiber throughout Bedford County and Campbell County in Virginia. And we're going to end up with another 20,000 passings of being able to provide high-speed internet to citizens in that part of Virginia. So in Vance County, with the award we received from North Carolina Department of Information Technology, that grant included 1,080 eligible addresses passed. The eligible addresses are the ones that are considered unserved and underserved, I think, on the map that Mr. Elliott gave you out, that's in our map. The total addresses that we're going to pass is 3,748 for basically 126 miles of fiber that we're going to put down in Vance County. Between us and the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, we're going to invest close to $3.7 million in Vance County. $2.6 million invested by the state of North Carolina, 1.1 million invested by Zytel itself. This right here shows the route map of the fiber that we're going to build in Vance County. These are points of presence or POPs that we've designated that we would like to that's one of the reasons we're here. We'd like to work with Vance County to get this in touch with your emergency services. These are specific volunteer fire and rescue stations that we would like to utilize and speak to them about doing the type of exchange of services, free internet, for allowing us to use a closet to put in some equipment and to distribute services to the citizens around that area. This slide right here shows you the actual addresses that we consider, that NCDIT considered eligible addresses, the 1,080. But what we really look at, and I think what the board is more going to be interested in, is this slide right here that shows all of the addresses that are going to be eligible to get Zytel service. So the remaining 2,000 and some addresses, or 2,700 addresses that are on that list, are going to have a competitive choice of internet provider, a high-speed internet provider. This slide right here that tells you about our services that we have. We think we're very competitive in the model of what our pricing is for internet. You can get a gig internet service, which is 1,000 meg down. It is a synchronous service, 1,000 meg down and 1,000 meg up, or 1 gig service for under $100 per month. The minimum service we have, the small service, is only $55 a month, and that's 100 meg down and 100 meg month. 100 meg down and 100 meg up. And it is going to be faster than anything that your citizens have right now in the rural areas that are dealing with satellite, fixed wireless solutions, the different satellite companies, and then things like that. So we're a very open company when it comes to our pricing. You can go to our website, and our pricing is all listed right on the main page of our website, including all of the pricing for the add-on fees and services and equipment rentals and things like that. We're very upfront and very open about that. Nobody's going to get caught off guard about our billing.
I believe I saw something in your presentation about low income.
Next slide. So some of the new offerings we have coming, and in fact, this is an older slide that needs to be updated. We have already got television services that we do. It's a streaming app provided by Vidgo. It's Zytel TV powered by Vidgo. Vidgo is a streaming service app similar to YouTube TV or Hulu TV Live, one of those. I don't know the local channels that they accommodate in Vance County. I know what they are back in Virginia. They do not have the NBC affiliate. They will not ever get the NBC affiliate, whoever that is here, because NBC is wholly owned by Comcast Universal. NBC Universal is partnered by Comcast, and the fees to get that channel are extremely, they're just outrageous for the small independent providers, since Comcast is one of the largest cable TV providers in the nation. So we also participate in the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is the FCC federal government's program that does a $30 reimbursement for low income. So those that qualify for the ACP program with the FCC, if you qualify for it, you can get our residential basic, which is still a 50 megabit plan, 50 meg down, 50 meg up for $29.99 a month. So this slide does need to be updated. It says 10 meg upload speed, but it's a 50 meg upload speed. If you qualify for the ACP, you can sign up for the residential basic service and get free internet. So, and it's up to the citizen to qualify for the ACP and go to the FCC's website and qualify, but then all they got to do is give us the number and we get reimbursed the $30 and give them immediate $30 discount. And they don't have to take that on this service to get a free service. They can get one of the faster services and just get a $30 discount off of that. So some of the things that we do different, because we are designed in the rural area. I told you about the story about Brandon, the owner of the company, and wanting $45,000 to go about 1,800 foot down a gravel driveway. We give 1,000 foot drop for free. So in the rural counties that we go to, we will run fiber down the gravel roads and off the hard service road where our connectivity is for 1,000 foot for free. Anything above 1,000 foot, we're only going to charge you the cost of the cable. It's going to be $1 per foot. So if you have a 3,000 foot drop, which is a half a mile gravel driveway to some of the farms in the rural areas, it's going to cost you $2,000 to get connected up. A lot of people aren't going to have $2,000 they're going to be able to drop at the time of installation. But one of the things we do, Zytel, we do not offer free incentives, sign up for 2 years, get the special great price for 2 years, and then all of a sudden your internet price and your TV price is going to triple at the end of your 2-year contract. You're a month-to-month customer with Zytel as soon as you sign up. We don't do any of those crazy promotions and everything like that. But if you do have a long drop that's going to cost a large amount of money, nowhere near what the national companies are going to charge you. So let's say you have a $1,500 or $2,000 cost for the drop to get the fiber to your house. We can work with you. We'll sign you up for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, 48, whatever it takes. We immediately give you a 20% discount off of that drop cost for signing up to be a multi-year customer. And then we'll just take that cost and divide it by the number of months. No interest, nothing to make on it. So if a lot of our customers in Virginia that have that plan, they're paying an additional $10 to $12 a month to cover the cost of that drop. Thank you very much for your time. Just anybody have any questions for me?
Madam Chairman, if I can just make a comment, this proposal by Zytel is not a new proposal. They submitted this back on the first round of the great grant applications to the state, and it was not funded. As I had tried presenting at the last meeting in August, the state of North Carolina through the Department of Information Technology or state resources has made $8 million per county available for broadband as new monies. They are allowing Vance County to use a portion of our $8 million to fund the state portion of this cost toward this program. So the state has reached out to the county, like I'd mentioned previously, and has offered this to Vance County, and it's not going to cost Vance County as a governmental entity a dollar unless the county voluntarily wanted to put money into it.
Does anyone have any questions?
Is all of your fiber buried or using some overhead?
We do about 70% buried and 30% aerial. It all depends on the terrain when you get in there. If you're sitting on top of a rock bed, then you don't want to try to bury it because NCDOT standards are very similar to VDOT standards. They want 36 inches deep, 3 foot deep buried in the public utility easement that's on the side of the road. And when you get into a rocky community, I don't think we're going to have that problem in Vance County.
It's on fiber and no line of sight equipment.
This is not a fixed wireless solution. Zytel does not do fixed wireless. We do not believe fixed wireless is a solution that brings the internet to citizens in any realm of the speeds that they need right now with what's going on. We are all 70% of our plant will probably be buried here in Vance County. It depends on who. We do have a joint use agreement with Duke Energy. And we're working with each counties if there's a smaller co-op or something like that to where we feel comfortable putting an aerial plant up and the poles are new and we feel comfortable. But I mean, we live in the mid-Atlantic region. North Carolina is not like Virginia. I don't like those sleepless winter weekend nights and stuff when the ice storm's coming up with those, putting ice all over the poles. So in Virginia, we have a terrible time with those. Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Oh, and one other thing, we do feel we're going to get, I forgot to say this, we do feel we're going to get started in Vance County within the next 90 days. So you're going to see construction crews moving in. We have our permits ready with NCDOT. We have the joint use agreement with Duke Energy. We do need to do any aerial plants. So we're thinking within the next 90 days, we're going to start construction here in Vance County.
So have people signed up for those?
The advertisement, we have had nobody call from Vance County. We haven't done any marketing and advertisement here because this award just came down.
So as of today, the state did send me a letter that was addressed to Zytel dated September 5th, basically saying the state has awarded them this contract. Vance County is not a party to it. It's a contract between the state of North Carolina and Zytel, basically saying that their required match is 1.1 million. And the state is funding 2.6 million of it. And so it's on go.
So how would the people know about this? The marketing of it?
We'll begin a marketing campaign. down here.
Okay.
TV commercials, billboards. The people watching this meeting right now. We do a lot of targeted social media ads. Social media. I know everybody here that has Facebook, you go on vacation, all of a sudden you're getting ads for things where you're at. The geofencing that they do and with social media right now is really good. So
Have you determined what part of the county you're gonna start in?
we don't know yet. That depends on the POP locations that we start in. POP, the points of presence, the ones I was talking about where we partner with the fire departments and the EMSs. We can get those contracts secured. We start from there and we work away from them and we join up. It also, we're in adjacent other counties like Warren County next door. We're building there and coming across. We're not in Granville County, but we're building in person in Caswell County right now. And eventually what we'd like to do is our build is designed so that we connect all the counties along the Virginia border, moving across from Surrey County all the way to Northampton County.
What time is it gonna take you to complete it?
So the contract is a 24-month contract from NCDIT from the time we signed the actual paperwork. Right now, with the award letter coming out today, that contract takes about 6 weeks for all the attorneys to put their stamp of approval on it. And then we sign up with the contract, then we can actually start construction. It's a 2-year contract to get it done, but at 126 miles, once we start construction, if we can get it started in the next 90 days, I think it's going to take about 8 to 10 months to get it completed. We'll be done in less than a year. For 126 miles of fiber, we can put in about 15 to 25 miles of fiber per month.
Does that include the winter months? Have y'all calculated the winter?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
months? Have y'all calculated the winter months?
Yes. We work right through the winter. These vibratory plows that have a blade that they shove into the ground, frozen ground doesn't stop them because they churn up rock and everything. So now the only problem is that, you know, having the your workers out in the winter months, you know, trying to get them to work is a little different. We will be making some hires locally. We will not bring in subcontractors. We usually build our own stuff. So there will be some job prospects coming to Vance County. I don't know if we're going to open an office up in Vance County. We try to regionalize those between a 3 to 4 county region. And with this side of our build that we're doing right now, that's Vance, Halifax, Warren, and Northampton County is kind of a little cluster. We'll probably centrally locate an office and do some hiring of some employees through there.
Now, you're located where you were saying like Danville and places like that now?
Yes, we offer service to the city of Danville and to just north of there at Smith Mountain Lake area.
So where you are, of course, someone was asked, so where you are, where you've gone before, what percentage of the population is signed up? What kind of response do you have?
Good question. We, it's called a take rate in our industry, and that's the take rate is in the unserved and underserved communities. So the people that have the fixed wireless, the satellite solutions, DSL, old school internet, the ones you consider not having access to internet. Those take rates for us are about 65%. 65% of the citizens will sign up for it on what we call a turn rate, which is our competitive market where we come in and build on top of Spectrum, build on top of Brightspeed. I still think we have a really good turn rate because I think we offer a better product and a better customer service solution than those larger national companies. And we get about a 35% turn rate in the areas we build in.
Okay.
So the grant targets those areas that are does not serve.
Those are the,
Understood.
yes. So
That's why you all have to go in those areas, right?
1,080 parcels are the unserved and underserved areas that we were awarded by the grant.
Okay.
But we connect everything together. Everything's a spider web of fiber. So just because we have 4 addresses or say 40 addresses here and 30 addresses here, and those fibers get connected along these routes of road, we're not going to leave those addresses out that we go right past. We're going to still give them the ability to connect up, which is they're not calculated in the cost for the grant.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Call the Water District Board into order.
Yes, Madam Chairman, board members, you have your monthly operations report in the agenda, basically giving work order completion, satellite office activity, and billing summaries. Take any questions if you have them.
If there's no questions on the close the Water District Board. Now we'll have committee reports and recommendations.
Yes, Madam Chairman, you have in the agenda package, your committee reports. Properties committees met on September 5th, handled 3 different things. The Head Start contract would like to lease the kitchen at the Eaton Johnson complex, and they would be paying the same rate of square footage, $10 per square foot that they're paying in the existing Head Start area. They have a total of 3,737 square feet. The properties committee is making a recommendation to approve the lease for this,
So move,
subject to county attorney review.
so move.
Second.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Fain, seconded by Commissioner Brumman in discussion. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it by unanimous vote. So approved.
Next item is the Tungsten Mine Road property. This is the convenience site. It's one of the county's convenience sites. This property we've had surveyed and we're interested in the possible acquisition of the site. We are right at this point in time having difficulty getting in contact with the property owner, who's a widow. Have tried contacting the children. I think we're going to maybe work through they actually live on the Virginia side. We're going to work through the clerk of court up there and possibly try to make some contacts, but we're still trying to track that down. On the EMS substation land, the committee had asked for a status report in terms of acquiring land for the future for a potential EMS substation. At this time, there's really nothing to report other than to have one out and looked in the area, Williamsboro area. As of today, looked at the New Hope Middle School area, just a couple different areas, but we'll hopefully bring something back to you in the near future. And that's all we have for the Properties Committee.
Okay, next we have the Finance Director's report.
Madam Chair, if I can, on her first item there for the E-Fleet. The E-Fleet was something that was introduced to you at your workshop that was held last month. And in talking to the chair and vice chair, you have recommended that we refer this to the Properties Committee. So we will take that before the committee for review and then bring it back to you.
Thank you. The B surplus property.
Yes, ma'am. In the continual effort to clean up the sheriff's office lot, there are numerous vehicles that need to be disposed of, scrapped, and or sold. There are a list below and the recommendation is as follows.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the property presented as surplus and authorize finance director to dispose of said property accordingly to the state statute.
Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Brummett, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? By unanimous vote, ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the county manager's report.
Yes, Madam Chairman, board members, first item is the Justice Assistance Grant. This is the annual process for the JAG grant that is applied for both by the city of Henderson and Vance County, 7% county money, 30% Vance County. The county's portion of this is $13,373, where the city receives $36,359. We are asking for your approval for the interlocal agreement between the city and the county for the purpose of receiving and using the federal JAG funds.
Move for approval of the local agreement, the city for receiving the Justice Assistance Grant funds.
Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Brummett for approval of the grant, the Justice Assistance Grant, seconded by Commissioner Faines. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Ayes have it by unanimous vote.
Next item, you have a fireworks permit requested by Vance County High School. This is for their homecoming. It will be on September 22nd. This will be handled by Professional Pyrotechnics, if I'm saying that correctly, firm, and with the appropriate credentials and insurance coverage. The Vance County Fire Marshals approved the permit subject to board approval. So it's recommended to consider this request.
Is this the first time they ever done this? Oh, I never saw them see this. Huh?
The homecoming.
Oh, yeah.
Move for approval of the request for the Vance County High School to do the fireworks display on September 22nd.
Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Brummett, seconded by Commissioner Austin. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it by unanimous vote.
Next item, the courthouse security. As reported to you at your last regular meeting in the month of August, the Courthouse Security Committee has met on August 11th and had a follow-up meeting on August 30th regarding Sheriff Braham's request to make changes to the secure corridor off of Rose Avenue. They did meet last Thursday, I believe it was, whatever the 30th was, and scheduled another meeting for September 15th. They continue to look at this and to render a recommendation they can bring back to you as a full board to consider. So there's no action on that. That's just information for right now.
Thank you.
Next item on opioid settlement funds. As part of the MOA, which is the memorandum of agreement that Vance County had signed on to, as well as all counties and municipalities that signed on to the opioid settlement funds. Through what is called the MOA, there's a annual impact report of which a jurisdiction is to hold a annual meeting with the municipalities to discuss how much money you're receiving, how you can use the funds, what are appropriate uses. Vance County to date had received $447,738. You'll receive by the year 2039 a total of $6.2 million in opioid settlement funds. At this point in time, in attending the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Conference 2 weeks ago, they were reporting out that the requirement to have your annual meeting needs to be by September 27th to be compliant. And I've talked to them, they're willing to come up and assist the county in holding an annual meeting. Basically would be just notifying the municipalities and any other entities that might be interested. No decisions would be made at this. It's just a review as to where we are with this at this point in time. And the Monday, the 18th, or Tuesday, the 19th, the 18th would correspond with the same date that you have a scheduled board workshop. We possibly could combine those two things into one meeting and kill two birds with one stone per se. But there's really there's no action being asked of you. This is just basically to check a box on this annual impact report that will be due every year to the state regarding these funds. And if the board is agreeable to that, we can track that to the 18th. Okay.
There's a broadband forum, I believe, that a representative Sossaman has put on 18th at 6.
Yeah, so we could, if you want to do this at 4 o'clock, we could do it at 4 o'clock.
On the 18th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Last item, it's been suggested that the Board of County Commissioners have consideration for the creation of 2 separate task forces, one dealing with violent crime, which may or not be a joint task force with the city of Henderson. Second would then be a separate task force on opioid settlement fund use moving forward, how those funds would be used. This is just put on here for your direction, seeking input as to how you would like to proceed on this, if that is the will of the board.
Would that be part of the meeting? The 18th?
Discussion on the 18th.
Sure. All right, Madam Chairman.
Calls about violent crime in the city. People are concerned citizens, so I think it's something we need to discuss, maybe, working together as a community and getting some of other organizations involved in the discussion to see how we can make Vance County a better place. And also we have opiate money that we have not used as of yet. I think there's rumors out that we did not use it appropriately, but we have not spent it as of yet. And I think that's something we need to discuss about putting that money into use.
And that money is sitting in a special revenue fund that is separate and apart from the county's general fund dollars, and it cannot be used for anything but for opioid specific purposes.
Is there a brochure or pamphlet or website that I can go to see what we can and what we can't use it for?
Well, we'll bring that to you on the 18th, but the NCACC, yes, they will get you the link. They've got a complete website dedicated to this.
I'm saying, do we have to wait till the 18th to get it?
Yeah, we'll get it to you.
Okay, next we have the county attorney's report. Mr. Carey.
Madam Chair, we have 2 properties for final decision for your consideration this evening. The first is Tiny Broadwick Boulevard. The high bid was put in by Wilmer Stanfield, $938. That was advertised, published, and no upset bids posted. Second one is 309 South College Street. The high bid is the initial bidder in the amount of $4,232.
That's just where? That's on College Street?
I'm sorry, on College Street, the final bid was $82.50. That one did receive upset bids.
Move for approval of the resolution accepting the bid for the county-owned properties at Tiny Broadwood Boulevard lot and also 309 South College Street.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made that we accept the bids for Tiny Broadway Boulevard and also 309 South College Street by Commissioner Brummett. It was seconded by Commissioner Austin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposition? So approved.
Madam Chair, I've got two other things I want to report to the board and just bring you up to speed on. We've had two different court filings that the county has been included in over the past month. The first one is from an individual who appears to be a sovereign citizen. I believe he had some criminal proceedings, possibly a traffic ticket, attempted to pay $21 on that ticket. The clerk's office, for some reason, returned the money. I'm sure it was in the way it was presented. Subsequent to that, this individual filed a lawsuit naming 7 or 8 defendants, one of which is our interim county manager, as well as a district court judge, a couple city police officers, himself, and a couple other folks, different, unique. We'll be filing to have us dismissed from that because even if there was any validity to the case, we obviously have nothing to do with those filings or anything like that. The other one is a petition from the district attorney's office. They are petitioning to have a body exhumed, i.e. Pulled out of the grave for an autopsy. We were included in that because the district attorney's office is asking that the judge rule for the county to pay for those expenses. The individual, I believe, based upon the sheriff's department's reports, was not a citizen of Vance County. We believe that they used to live here and moved to Tennessee, but the death certificate shows that they were a resident of Vance County. The statute says that the county pays for everything if it's a resident of Vance County. The district attorney's office is asking for us to pay for the exhumation and the state to pay for transportation. So that'll be going to court sometime over the next 2 or 3 weeks as well.
This body is in Tennessee.
No, it's here.
Okay.
What, are they gonna take it to Tennessee?
Did the,
You do the autopsy here.
is this involving a
Okay.
criminal action?
No, there was no criminal action. It appears to be a disagreement on standard operating procedures and the interpretation of the statutes. I forget the language of the statute, but the language of the statute says if the death occurred in a suspicious manner, or there's three different words, and basically the investigation done by our investigators eliminated any of those 3 things, and so it was never turned over. My understanding is the father, who lives in Tennessee now, is the one wanting this to be done, but is not willing to pay for the autopsy. And so the district attorney's office is who, and it's who the statute appoints as the one to bring the filing, has the right to file and ask for this.
What you say the statute said we have to pay?
Statutes say if it is a citizen resident of Vance County, we pay.
But we got a lawsuit too? Or just them?
2 totally unrelated things.
I'm trying to look at it. That's weird.
How much would it be? Don't know.
Yeah.
I have a clue.
So did the death happen in the city or the county?
County.
Okay.
County investigated, sheriffs.
Okay,
Interesting.
Interesting.
next we have the consent agenda. Do we want to take it as a whole or do we want to go item by item?
You can take it.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Third.
Motion has been made that we approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Brummett. It has been seconded by Commissioner Fains. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? Ayes have it by unanimous vote. Next, we have miscellaneous for appointments. Kristen?
Yes, we have two appointments for the month. Reappoint Edith Thompson to the Vance County Housing Authority and appoint Phil LeCurnick to fill the vacant District 4 position to the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustments.
I approve that we reappoint Edith Thompson,
Edith.
Edith Thompson to the Vance County Housing Authority and appoint Phil Lakener to fill vacant position for the Vance County Planning Board and Board of Adjustments.
Second.
The motion has been made that we accept the two applicants for appointments, Ms. Edith Thompson to the Housing Board and Mr. LeCurnick for the Planning Board. And he does represent, the district that has the vacancy, and it was, recommended by the commissioner, which oversees that, particular district. So all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? By unanimous votes, ayes have it for the appointment of these two individuals to the boards. So next, does anyone have any a motion that we go into closed session?
Madam Chairman, we go into closed session, and discuss the economic development project and a personnel matter.
A motion has been made that we go into closed session. Has it been seconded?
Second, yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's been properly second. All those in favor?
Uh,
Any nays? Any discussion? By unanimous vote, we are now going into closed session.
And we'll have minutes for approval after, when we come out.
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
Try it again.
Can y'all hear me?
Hello, Ms. McKenzie.
Is your green light on?
First, we're gonna have now that we're in closed session, we're gonna have a report from our economic development.
She's away. She's away.